Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger, and I'm the founder of the Brand Media Coalition, which is a group of leading brands committed to helping organizations achieve their own goals through the power of brands. And the BMC is a division of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. And we're here today to talk about the essentials and motivational events, certainly in the era of COVID. And we're lucky today to have four people that are really at the front lines of this. Rick Garlick, who's vice president of Magid, which is a management consulting firm, and he's also chief research office for the Incentive Research Foundation. We have Stephen Cook. He's owner of Lorandis Meetings and Incentives, a leading meetings and incentive company in Canada based just outside of Toronto. We have Jackie Busby. She's chief incentive strategist for Lux Incentives, a 30-year-old incentive and meetings company. And Kate Cardoso, who's director strategic services for HMI Performance Incentives, and that is a leading meetings and incentive company based in the Boston region. So thanks all of you for attending and participating. So my first question is to get an update on the whole COVID situation. And Rick, coming from the research side, what do you see happening in group motivational events? It sounds like it's beginning to come back. What's going on based on the research you're seeing?
Well, certainly it's a timely conversation. The IRF just recently collaborated with SITE and FICP to do the Incentive Travel Index for the probably the 10th at least year in a row. And this study was done with over 2,000 respondents from 115 different countries, so it's pretty definitive. And one of the things that we've seen in not only that research, but other research we've done is that although incentive travel certainly took a hit in 2020, as we all know, the situation is not as bad as you might think. Now, when you compare us to 2008 and 2009, the industry did not do a good job at making its own case prior to the recession. The industry did a much, much better job in the last decade at creating ROI stories for their management teams in order to really show the value of incentive travel. So as a result, a number of programs that were canceled, that are being canceled, and the number of programs that are being brought back is very encouraging. On the participant side, not surprisingly, the interest in travel has not really diminished that significantly. We only saw about a 3% decline in terms of the percentage of people who would be interested in incentive travel, which is nothing. And there's been some other shifts that we can talk about during the course of the conversation in terms of what that experience looks like. But I'd say if you look at it from a half empty versus a half full perspective, that the glass is pretty half full, maybe even 3/4 full.
Stephen, what is your perspective? What are you seeing with your clients?
I'm in Canada, and we do have the majority of our clients in Canada, and we have clients in the US. So I would say that in the US, the risk tolerance is lower. So there is an early start to the resumption of reward and recognition programs using incentive travel. In Canada, we are seeing a delay in that. So where we would see traction as early as Q2 in this year for the US client base, we're not seeing that traction until Q4 in Canada. And that's primarily due to government regulations and the vaccine rollout. The other part of that story is that there has been a postponement factor here. So all the clients who had embedded their programs in 20 and pivoted to early 21 had to pivot again to fall of 21 and or 22. So the outcome of that is put on some unnecessary crush on supply side. So even though there may be an appetite for new business, there's a supply side challenge on that because of all of the rebooking that was done in 21, 22. What's happened therefore is that we have seen clients starting to talk about their 23 and 24 programs. So it actually has ignited a conversation around reward and recognition incentive travel for a longer, I'd say a wider window. Typically, a year would be normal, maybe 18 months for our client base. Now we're seeing those conversations expanded to 24 months, 30 months, and 36 months.
One quick question, Stephen, I wasn't quite clear. Did you say that the US market is more risk adverse and therefore is pushing off to the fourth quarter and the Canadian?
Less risk, sorry, Bruce, less risk averse, less risk averse.
So the US folks are more likely to be pushing into second and third quarter, and the Canadian market is a little bit more cautious.
That's correct.
Thank you. So Jackie, what's your perspective on this?
Well, one of the things that we've experienced, number one, our clients that have come back are interested in having an exclusive experience where they are the only ones at a property, which we call a corporate buyout, and the ones that have really come back are the ones that are attaching a return on investment. So the C-suite can understand how it's really a profit center for them. My clients that just use their incentive programs as a thank you aren't as likely to come back. The ones that are, though, are using co-op dollars. And so therefore they're spending OPM, other people's money, and they're not spending it quite as stringently as they would spend their own. We've experienced a delay in our office because of the COVID policies that we're having to negotiate, from cancellation to, if COVID comes back again, because we've got clients traveling in fall. I mean, we just have so many more variables in our contracts that we've ever had before, depending upon what our clients' hot buttons are. And, we're their advocate, but it's almost taking us 4 times longer to negotiate all the contracts. Does that make sense? Is anyone else experiencing that?
Well, that's a good, Kate, you're nodding, so I'm going to turn that over to you. What trends are you seeing, playing off of what Jackie said?
Yes, exactly what Jackie said. We pushed spring of 2020 to fall of 2020 to spring of 2021 to fall of 2021. So it's been a lot of addendums. We've done a lot of addendums. It's really been a good opportunity to look at hotel contracts and change hotel contracts to be more favorable and better protect our clients. So we're doing a lot of that, a lot of work on that. I did just have my first program in a year on site last week in Miami, 62 people, 31 couples. And they had a wonderful time. It was really great to be back on the road. Things were done very carefully with the caution and safety and health of all of the attendees kept in mind, but it's different. It is very different. And we are looking at how things are different from a practical standpoint: masks, social distancing, all of that, practical issues, but also this is an opportunity to reimagine group travel. And so we're really looking hard at that in terms of re-engaging, rediscovering, reconnecting, rejuvenating, because this is an opportunity that we can make things better. And part of that is to really create more of an authentic experience everywhere we go. We do mostly international travel, and we have groups as early as August going internationally, and a really busy fall lineup, believe it or not. And so we're really excited to get back into it, but to do it differently. And one of the things that I'm most excited about as part of this reimagining campaign that we're working on is doing a food insecurity initiative in every destination that we go to as part of the program, because I think that we've all realized that we live some pretty fortunate lives, and we need to be able to give back, not only in our local communities, but everywhere we travel. So we're excited to have this opportunity to rethink, to reimagine, and business is really picking up.
Oh, that's exciting. Rick, getting to you again on the ROI issue that Jackie raised. The industry, the IRF was founded actually in the 1990s, its original organization, and it invested for years in research. And I've always gotten the sense that most of it hasn't been used. You look at most of the websites of the incentive companies, very few of them talk about ROI. Are you beginning to see a change now in that? Are we beginning to see companies, you had mentioned that the industry's done a good job of promoting ROI. Are you seeing that beginning to trickle down to the corporate practice where what is this program accomplishing? And I'm going to ask that question of all of you, but starting with you, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the level of accountability certainly increased after 2008, 2009. That's when we really saw a requirement to make the case, and people learned their lesson, which is a good thing. I'd also say, the whole idea that people are being much more accountable with their money. So they're looking at things like participant satisfaction, at the top level, but they're also looking at things like, did this program increase productivity, retention, engagement with the organization? All those sorts of things as very important outcomes. So even though the picture for incentive travel was very, very rosy in 2019, we were starting to see things in our data that showed that program cancellations were starting to increase, that people were taking the money they use on incentive travel and reinvesting it in other types of incentives. So this becomes very, very important for those in the incentive travel business.
Stephen, are you seeing more, are the clients now getting more serious about ROI? How is this program? Is it just a thank you program, as Jackie alluded to, or is it really getting more about how do I reinforce my corporate purpose? How do I re-engage my employees to focus on the critical, or my dealers or distributors on our goals and whatnot? Or is that not really changed as much as we'd like?
I think that we want it to change, Bruce, but it's not changing at the pace that you would expect, because there's a lot of legacy incentive travel programs, which I will say have the usual suspects. We're always looking to move that middle 60% up to that top 20% of the performers. And because they're legacy programs, it is almost a step and repeat, and it becomes much more about the execution of the program itself. What's lacking is measurement. Starting with a defined set of goals and objectives, whether they be performance-based, cultural-based, channel distribution, sales, but setting those KPIs, if you wish, the measurements first, and then benchmarking those, to Rick's point, against the outcome of the program, i.e., did it achieve the desired results? And then obviously if it is a self-liquidating, so does that, if the cost of the program is say $1 million, has the increase in sales accreted that cost? Or has the cultural impact? It's hard to measure that. So it's much more of a complex discussion at the C level when you're trying to overcome the notion of a legacy program. If it's a new program, a greenfield, then you can introduce the ROI concept early into the conversation because there is an investment. It's interesting to me that most companies that have legacy programs are resistant to canceling those programs. In 2008, we saw some of that attrition because finance took over. Then there was a shift to the CMO or the chief sales officer. And once that happened, we saw a reignition of those programs. But the measurement aspect is what's missing, candidly. We like to think it's there, but a lot of times it's not. And the conversation needs to be reintroduced or introduced to begin with.
Well, Jackie, you've told a funny story recently where you were talking with the client and you were trying to bring up the issue of ROI, and you got a very kind of polite pushback. I know you've been very committed to pushing ROI. What progress do you agree with your colleagues here that we still have a long way to go, or are you seeing more progress?
I think especially as the workforce gets younger, that we are seeing more progress. And Steve, you are singing to the choir here. And so because we do such a great job at executing and, turnkey marketing, we anticipate needs before they ever happen. That's the wheelhouse they'd like to see me in. However, I'm a big line item in the budget and I need to justify the spend. And so what we've done is we have a technology platform that really runs the incentive program for them. And, I've been doing top performer trips. That's only about the top 20%. But what about, those middle producers? How do you take those C players, make them C plus, B players, make them B plus, so you can really dramatically increase your sales? And I do that through a combination of incentive travel and merchandise. And I've got a platform that administers that. And then on the back end, it can attach your key performing metrics with your program rule structure. So it's turnkey, and it's just like fill in the blanks, and then you need the marketing and the gamification and the business analytics, all that to roll into one. So my platform is helping me do work that I wasn't really invited in to do, if you know what I mean. But because my budget's kept on getting cut, I needed to do it. So, and I'm
Kate,
passionate about it.
well, thank you, Jackie. And Kate, the company that you work for is called HMI Performance Incentives. So I know that you folks definitely try to promote a performance message with these programs. How much progress are we making with the corporate end user on this?
Well, as a performance improvement company, we have to be able to, we have to look at the numbers. And so we have tried to make it easy to get the numbers, because sometimes the hardest part is accessing the numbers. And in some cases, the client doesn't want to share. In some cases, they don't even really have access to the data we're asking for. So we try and make it as easy as possible. Here's a spreadsheet template. If you could just put in these numbers, we will run them for you. We'll tell you what the goals should be. So we work a lot on the strategy side and developing the program, not the event necessarily, the program, because we don't just do group travel, we do the individual incentives too. And what's been interesting, and Jackie can probably speak to this too, is having the ability to do, we move some of our group travel trips, some of our programs into individual rewards programs in 2020, because the client said, you know what, I don't want to push this to 2021 or 2022. Let's roll this into an individual rewards. It's merchandise, it's individual travel, and just do it in 2020. So to have we couldn't have done that without data, obviously, and assigning point values and giving those individual awards. So it's really great to be diversified in this, because there is a lot of overlap and back and forth that we can offer our clients in situations like we've just experienced in 2020.
So it sounds like, in summary, talking to all four of you, we're seeing some progress. There is some hope, but thank heavens the IRF has a lot of work to do still, Rick, to really prove that these are a cultural part. These are part of your culture. A lot of companies do these programs on faith. The owner or the top executives just believe in them, and that's why they do it. I think Stephen called that legacy program. So, but let's get more granular now.
Bruce, could I just make one last comment on
Please.
that to my colleagues' points? And I agree with everything that's been said. The percentage of people who say that we have this program because it's always been here, we just sort of drink the Kool-Aid, believe the religion or whatever. It's nice to see that number is shrinking. It's still very large out there, but it's shrinking. That more people are requiring accountability. But one of the big things that comes up in our research is that people say, hey, we'd like to create this ROI story, but we don't know how to do it. We don't have the knowledge, and not everybody's a statistical researcher, right? Who works for companies. So one of the things that I could say is that the IRF is working very diligently, along with SITE and others, to try to create these ROI stories to help people in the business.
Oh, well, thank you, Rick, on that. Steve, I'm going to move to you on this then. Let's say you're an uncle in the business, and Jackie and Kate, you'll be aunts in the business, and somebody calls you and they say, look, I'm being presented with $1 million program to bring everybody to the Barbados or whatever. What should you look for, when you're selecting a supplier in this field? In the past, I've heard that companies have hired travel agents to do group incentive travel, and that doesn't always work out well. Just giving advice to an executive, Stephen, and I'm going to give that to you and Jackie, Kate as well. What is your advice in terms of selecting a vendor, and one who might even understand ROI for that matter?
That's a very good question. I'm trying to think of a good analogy that would demonstrate that, because you're absolutely right, Bruce. We do compete against retail travel providers who simply might call a tour operator up, book a package vacation on a group fare, and add a welcome cocktail event and a closing event and call that an incentive program. That's like putting up a tent in your backyard and saying we're building a house. Design is everything, right? So there is, to Rick's point, there is a soft science to design of incentive travel programs, because it really is the kingpin of reward and recognition, which leads to retention. So if you don't design the program well, whether it be the communications plan built around measurable objectives that then is executed with a well-balanced program where there is a foundation of very strong risk management, like doing a hotel contract, as Jackie mentioned, that there is value within that, because understanding the landscape of incentive travel destinations and vendor partners is understanding where you will find value or a deal, for lack of better words. So there's it's not complicated, but there's a complex number of levers that we in the incentive travel industry understand, rather than making a phone call or making a click and booking a group trip, essentially, and then labeling that to be an incentive. And we see that a lot, and that's okay, because at least they're buying into the notion that travel is a retention tool, as a recognition tool, is a reward tool. That's a good thing. And, we have had conversations with clients who have that approach. And to be honest, unless they're going to want to elevate the experience, then we're not really going to be able to convince them. But $1 million program is a significant amount of money. So I would think that particular client is looking for a ROI on that, and will use a professional incentive travel planning, reward and recognition company to execute that for them.
Jackie, do you have anything to add to
Oh
that?
my God, yes, I do. Steve, the only thing worse than booking it through a travel agent that, just as you described, that doesn't, have the strategy for ROI, and doesn't have the marketing components, because we do everything turnkey. I'm sure you guys do too, is booking it themselves to have someone's pet, trip, and the corporate wife chooses where they go, and and one of the clients we talked to that has a $780,000 program, they didn't even map out the destinations to make sure that they could get to everything they wanted to. I mean, just lack of forethought and planning and strategy is just appalling at times, because it becomes a pet project of someone's that is protected within the company and has been there forever. And we always say, you don't know what you don't know, right? And we're working at getting a trip from someone right now that is doing that. But it's really hard to demonstrate how you're different. It's like, how do you orchestrate relationship-based travel experiences to get something like a private exclusive experience in a restaurant when no one else is there but your group? Those are the things that it can only really be experienced to be understood. Does that make sense? And to have the marketing communications just be turnkey, right?
Kate, your perspective on this?
Having an experienced third party planning your event is really an insurance policy. And it was important, and it made a big difference before the pandemic. I'm hoping that because of the pandemic, it will make a lot more sense to clients, to potential clients. For the most part, we were able to reschedule and push all of our programs into 2021 and into 2022 without any fees or penalties or anything like that. There were a couple of vendors, a couple of hotels that really pushed back. And so we are going to be even more strategic about who we work with, because that's a critical piece of this. And it's a stark difference between those hotels that said, of course, we're moving this, no charges 2, 3, 4 times. And the ones that said, no, sorry, we can't. And I know it's financial viability and stability. So really vetting the vendors that we work with to know that they are going to be with us no matter the circumstances, to make sure that the client again is protected is such an important thing. And yes, of course we've seen it. I'm a wedding planner. I can plan a corporate event, and that's very different. So you really have to have, I mean, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I'm sure everybody on here has that experience level, and that experience makes a huge difference. And also for clients, to get feedback and advice that if a client comes and says, oh, well, we do it this way, you're looking for a vendor who will say, okay, that'll work. Have you thought about maybe doing it this way or that way, and really looking for a vendor that's not just going to go along with the way that things have been done before, but give you some good ideas about, well, I've seen this work, and this seems to be the trend. So getting really some proactive feedback about how to make a program better.
So it gets down to expertise, ROI, contractual knowledge. And then here's my next segue to my next question, the experience itself. I've been on multiple incentive trips over my long lifetime. And frankly, some of them I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I don't want to be put personally onto a tour bus. I don't want to be, hauled around as if I'm in a group tour. I've always, enjoy experiences. So Rick, and this is a question for all of you. It would seem to be that the pandemic and the millennial generation, and in fact, a lot of people are saying that the pandemic is speeding up trends, and that we were already seeing the trend that the millennial trend, they want to travel differently than the old folk from the farm country who weren't comfortable traveling. So they're happy to be in a bus and escorted. Well, the whole concept of group travel has changed. Rick, do you think the pandemic will speed up a shift to a more experiential approach to these programs? Because you don't need to get on an airplane to hear a panel discussion anymore. I mean, this is going to be a great show that people can get on demand at 3 a.m. So how will travel change, you think, if at all?
Sure. We have talked for some time about the fact that we've evolved into an experience economy, and everything you said about the millennials is absolutely correct. One of the things that all of our research and all of our conversations have shown is that a growing requirement is flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. The old trips used to be designed in such a way that it was sort of like everybody got taken to the same place. All the events and activities were planned around the group rather than giving individuals options and flexibility to do their own thing during the trip. So that's one big change, is the demand for flexibility and individualized, personalized experiences within the group travel experience. The other thing is we see a shift toward unexplored destinations, and that's really a product of the pandemic. It creates a tremendous opportunity for places because instead of going to the same old well-traveled places that are sometimes suffer from over-tourism, that undiscovered destinations that maybe have not been so widely traveled now have a real chance and a real appeal to people who don't want to go to crowded spaces. The other thing is that, people are really looking more for activities that incorporate corporate social responsibility and sustainability. Health and wellness is another big trend in the experience that people are looking for. So we're seeing some shifts that I agree with you, we're probably going to eventually happen anyway, but the pandemic has certainly accelerated those activities.
So to break it up, I'm going to go to you on this one, Kate, because in our warm-up, you were talking about this. How do you see the incentive travel event or program changing in the future?
We talked about experiential, and Rick mentioned the personalization piece of it too. So I think those are two really important words in terms of the future of group travel overall. And you talked about this panel. When I was in Miami with the program last week, I did some site visits while I was there, and I'm working on sourcing for this. Really, it's a very meeting space intensive program. It's a conference, and so we're looking at the space and what will work. And we're talking with the hotel about technology that they have. Can they be live streaming breakouts and general sessions into the guest rooms? Can somebody be watching a breakout session or the general session on their laptop with their earbuds in at the pool? So how do we let the attendees, whether it's an incentive or a meeting or a conference, make it what they want to make it? And I think that there is a lot to be said for really just rethinking everything. Why is everybody in a ballroom at the same time? Can't we make it? And of course, it's about the networking and it's about the connecting. So can't that be just around the meals, the group meals, and some team building around corporate social responsibility? So there are a lot of really wonderful ways to do it that are more impactful than having everybody sit together in a theater seating or classroom seating, watching the stage. So there's a lot of exciting new ways to do this, and I think it's going to be great. I'm excited about it.
Well, it's certainly going to require more creativity, and that's going to really rule out the retail travel agent. No offense to you folks, because they're simply not going to have this type of expertise. Stephen, again, what do you think about this notion? And Kate referring to the conference. I mean, the idea of getting on an airplane to sit in a big auditorium now to listen to a panel discussion, that's not what we need. We need to get together with people. It would seem to me that the events of the future are really going to be all about interactivity, roundtables, not sitting in a conference statically, but talking to people, maybe doing a CSR activity, maybe going on a hike together or a fishing trip where everybody's out. That's where you really interact. Do you think the corporate client we're going to get much more creative? Do you agree with Kate on that?
Well, one thing I'll say, if any of your viewers are watching this, you just got the payday with Kate's last comment on terms of innovation in streaming meetings while you're there. That's leading edge, and that's crazy innovative, leveraging technology. I have a couple of thoughts. One is, in order to see eye to eye, you have to meet face to face. I don't think anything will ever replace that. Now, with incentive travel, there sometimes is a Congress component, a meeting component, sometimes for tax reasons, and sometimes because leadership wants to share concepts or hear feedback. So that's why there is a meeting. To Rick's point, flexibility, that is the number one trend we're seeing. It may be driven by millennials, although they're not a very large part of the population. We still have, I won't call it a hangover from our generation, but from the boomers, still being, I would think, Rick, the predominant audiences. But I would say that to leverage technology further, for example, using registration and asking your constituents what is their interest, so that when you have a activity, you have an activation. That's the new buzzword. So, for example, say that there's 4 categories of interest. Could be fitness, could be food, could be culture, could be history, it could be nothing. But say you look at their interests and then you tailor the activities for the interest. So we're not all getting on a bus and doing a city tour. We're maybe getting on a bicycle and having a docent take us through street art. And then the activation would be, hey, one of the artists is going to come and show you how they did it, and you can experience that yourself. So experiential, it's actually more return on time. You're asking me to come here. I've earned my way here. Don't abuse my time while I am here. The value of time cannot be overstated. So I think technology has a place in identifying the interests and needs to meet that flexibility demand that Rick spoke of. So I see that as being a trend that is evolving.
So Jackie, I'm going to give you the last word on this. You said something at the beginning of when we were all talking before about people hankering to travel again. What do you see on that score, and how do you think that's going to affect the motivational event business in the coming year and a half?
Well, there's just been a study published that 50% of people would rather travel than even have sex. So Stephen, you are singing to the choir here again with the return on time. I'm a Virtuoso member. It's a luxury travel consortium, about 15 billion worldwide. And we leverage those relationships to have really different, unique experiences. And that is like the biggest part of my program. And even some of our meetings are now being done outside. So they're a lot more loose and organic. And it's just a flow where just the relationships happen. I mean, one of the things that we did, which was so fun on one of my last programs, is we had a headphone party where there was music playing, but everyone had headphones on. So there was no music that you could hear, but everyone was dancing. And the CFO said to me, Jackie, I thought that was the stupidest thing ever. And it was the best thing ever. So it's like what Katie's saying, you got to think outside of the box. You got to make it, unique. You've got to give them something that they wouldn't get on their own. And I wanted to bring one thing back that I think all of us as professionals bring to the table. We carry insurance riders on our programs. I carry a $5 million rider, and we also have errors and omissions insurance. So what if something happens? What, if Sally Ann down in accounting, book this, what are they going to do? Who are they going to call, right? Things happen on program, and you've got to, be fiscally responsible and think about, the what ifs that we've never experienced before. So.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to kind of sum up very quickly what everybody said. And then, of course, we'll let you all go. Bear with me 1 second while I just share my screen again. This is information, obviously, about the Brand Media Coalition, but I want to sum up, in the meantime, a couple of quick trends. Number one, I think the good news is that there's so much desire for the group motivational event experience that in the US, especially, Hank, people are really pushing the envelope, and they're already getting traveling. We've already heard about it, and that if the disaster probably wasn't as bad as we thought. I think that we're hearing from Stephen that the risk tolerance in the US is a little bit less than Canada, which I would have thought, frankly, Stephen, it's the opposite, but that's another story. You know better than I. I think another area that we discuss is that there's been some progress in ROI. There's been some progress in looking at these programs as part of our culture, but that the legacy programs tend not to be as measured much, and that there's more opportunity in the more with the new clients to really focus on ROI. I'm just looking at my notes here. Also, one of the benefits of working through experts like you is not just the ability to create a magical event and to be creative and to really find special ways to make people connect, but also practical things like contracts, making sure you're protected. Hearing from Kate, the ability to redo contracts and the clout that a professional motivational event planner has. That's all very important. And then kind of a couple of other areas is that we're really seeing the change of the travel experience being accelerated. We were seeing it before the pandemic anyway, with people wanting more personalized, customized, magical experiences. And we're seeing even more of that. And likewise with corporate social responsibility type of programs, give back programs. People, as I think Kate said, or one of you said, understand that a lot of people have suffered, and that there's a lot more a sense of appreciation that people want to give back. So folks, I thank you for helping us with this session today. You were all terrific. This session is going to be marketed throughout the year on the EEA's YouTube channel. And I wish you all a good day, and thank you, listeners, for your participation. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Goodbye.
Thank you.